Hello. This is once again one of my absolute favorite stories, and like most times, we'll talk about the story and its application to life because that's what it is all about. So, um, for this, I'll have to go back many, many years to when I was a child. When I was a child, when I was a school going kid, maybe 8, 10 years of age, I used to walk down to my school. I remember those days very beautifully. Beautiful mornings, lovely countryside. I lived in a small town then, and beautiful weather for the most part. And I used to walk down the uh, streets and the main roads all the way to school with my friends. And once in a while, a bicyclist or a biker or a car, there were very few cars back then, but a car driver would go past me honking loudly, saying, "Get out of my way, kid." And I used to feel very nervous when that used to happen because I would be walking on the street merrily, oftentimes lost in thought, and I would suddenly be shaken out of my thoughts, very rudely. And it irritated me as to why people would do that, right? But then I grew a little older and my dad got me a bicycle. I would then start riding to school on my bicycle. It was a lot of fun. It gave me a lot of pleasure to have the wind in my hair, to feel, like a little bit like a little prince on the street. And I would just ride my bike merrily, sometimes with my friends, sometimes by myself. And then once in a while, I used to see a pedestrian who would be walking, daydreaming almost. And I would ring my bell at them, saying, "Dring, dring, dring, get out of my way. What's wrong with you? Why are you walking on the road?" And then there would be this biker or a car that would come at me and honk loudly and do pretty much the same to me. And I would get irritated. I would be nervous all over again because I was on a bike, remember? Didn't have a lot of safety gear back then, so I would feel a little uncomfortable, a little scared even sometimes. And I used to literally hate them for, doing that to me. I was like, why can't you just go quietly and, not trouble me while I'm riding my bike? I got into college, and after I turned 18, my dad, on my 18th birthday, got me a bike, a motorbike. It was a lot of fun. I mean, it was a dream come true almost. So I got the bike, learned pretty quickly, and I would go on the road, feel more like a king now, should I say. And the roads would just, I would just zip through places and, get from place to place quickly. It was a very fun bike also. And then I would come across pedestrians, bicyclists, and I would honk at them saying, "Get out of my way. Don't you see I have a bike now? Don't you see?" It was a lot of fun, I thought, because these lesser models would be in my way. And I was like, that's none of their business. Why would they do that? Why don't they just walk on the side? And then there would be, someone in a car or sometimes a bus or a truck who would, come from behind and honk at me loudly. And I would, once again, feel a little nervous because, I was at risk. And, I would, once again, pretty much hate the way they did that. Then I grew up, I started working, and eventually I bought my first car. It was an old one, but it was a car nonetheless, and it was a used car, I meant. And it was my first car. I enjoyed driving around a lot, and I would now honk at pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorbike riders. I don't know why they would come in the way. Can you imagine that? And then there were larger vehicles, who most often be slower than I was, but somehow they would just, we would get into a situation where they would honk at me, and from their high perched seats. Imagine. And I would wonder as to why they do that. Why can't they just be minding their own business? And then one day it dawned upon me. Through those many years, and we're talking a couple of decades, I guess, around, yeah. Through those many, many years, there's a guy honking at me right now, by the way. So through those many years, I realized that the only thing that had changed was the way I was commuting. I was still the same. I might have grown a bit, but hardly in the larger scheme of things. And the only thing that had changed was the way I was commuting, the means I was using to commute, from walking on foot to riding a bicycle to riding a motorbike, and then to a car like the one I'm driving now. Nothing else had changed, and yet in my head I had grown so much, and it was uncalled for, because at the end of the day, this was all a pseudo sense of growing bigger. Well, the learning for me was that the only way to fix this, the only way to change the way we live, this particular part of our lives, is to think of this growth as the growth in responsibility rather than the growth in status or stature. So now the way I look at it is, if I'm driving a car, everyone who's got either a smaller car or a bike or a bicycle or is a pedestrian becomes my responsibility. In that, even if they make a mistake, I do not feel angry, I do not feel irritated. I do fear for them. I do feel for what could possibly go wrong, but anger is not one of the emotions that I feel. And it has completely changed the way I perceive these situations. So when I'm in traffic, when I'm wading through a sea of pedestrians or bicyclists or motorbike riders, it doesn't anger me that they are in the way. There's one bicyclist right now in front of me. He's fine, I'll let him go, because he's my responsibility. And imagine if all of us started doing that with whatever means of commute we are using. Think about it. At home, you have little kids, babies, infants, and they walk past you, they crawl past you. You don't get angry at them for being slow and sluggish and in your way. You take that as your responsibility. You take it upon yourself to make sure that they're safe. So that's pretty much it. That's what I think makes a big difference to how we perceive this and how we can affect this particular situation every single time we encounter it. Alright, that was that. Thank you again for listening in. This one is probably longer than I had wanted it to be, but I hope it has made some sense and that you enjoyed it a bit. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good day, folks.